This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.
Friends, frenemies, allies, foes, supporters, subscribers, disciples, ladies, gentlemen, and not so gentle men and Bulls fans, welcome to the Lekker Rugby Pod. We've given you in-depth, one-of-a-kind chats with the likes of Darbo, Pierce, Frans Steyn, Masotti, Ackers, Heineke, Van Graan, Franco, an honorary Safa, Tim Cocker, the egg chaser, as well as two Kiwis. TJ, Mr. Restraint, Tony Johnson, the eloquent commentator from Auckland, and Warren Gatland, Hermanus Whale Arse. But today we bring you a raw, an unplugged Kiwi, a shock jock, if you will, of rugby, who was so happy to have me on in his studio in Auckland, hours after his team had beaten mine, in a gleaming studio with proper couches and mics and lights and whiskey and pop songs. But now, as he is so sad about Wellington, the Wellington Wallow, the fallen cake tin, the 6-try wallop, the upper hut hiding, this man has fled to the Adriatic Sea to be in La Serenissima, the floating city of canals, Venezia, Venice, where he was trying to look around, where maybe you could find some sculptures by Titian or Tintoretto and find some scrum props for himself in that lovely lagoon of palaces slowly sinking like the All Blacks lately, lacking a razor's edge, where nobody could recognize this on the New Zealand airwaves, the rugby shock jock, the Devlin in the details, my friend and fond foe, Martin Devlin. How's it, Marty? I could have you on.
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be with you both. MV, we meet today for the first time, so thank you so much for inviting me on. Harry, I love the intro. Yeah, I'm on the other side of the world. My youngest son, I'm a divorced man, so our youngest son is in Uppsala in Sweden at university. I don't get to see him for 6 months, and so myself and my partner, we flew over to be with him in Rome for a week. And then we've decided to take a little trip to Venice ourselves afterwards. So we watched the All Blacks box in a bar in Rome last week. And it was, some things I know are bigger than sport. And very rare I say that, but seeing your family, and especially as a parent, getting to meet one of your children overseas is an experience which is just overwhelming as a parent. It's just something that... And MV, I'm sure you know this too. I mean, it's just your heart fills with joy when you meet your sons overseas or your daughters overseas. Unfortunately, we got our butts handed to us on a plate that day, and we'll talk about this obviously throughout the podcast. But part of the joy of being a sports fan is you remember your victories and you remember your losses, and we will always remember where we were when the All Blacks suffered a record defeat. Humiliating it was and embarrassing it was, but it's an absolute pleasure and a long-winded way of being here on the podcast. I thank you both.
Well, I wanted to say this. The reason why my lighting looks so good is because we moved into a new house, because we're not officially empty nesters. My son's just moved to Stellenbosch. It's about 1,500 kilometers away. So we're slowly getting there. Harry's got more experience of, meeting up his children overseas, I suppose. But I wanted to just ask you about that cheeky analogy of Harry about the sinking city and the sinking like the All Blacks. And I heard you chuckle there. Is that a valid comment, do you think?
Look, I think the reality is, and I was watching a bit of the All Blacks social media today, and I was frustrated again while I was watching it. It was Cody Taylor, in fact, and he was talking about, the boys are hurting, we're taking the learnings. And I was sitting there, you've got to remember my age and stage. I'm 61 years old. I grew up in an era when, in a different way that New Zealanders think about the All Blacks and react to defeats. We started a radio station called Radio Sport in 1998. I began that radio station. I was the breakfast host on that radio station. And that year we lost 5 times. We lost 3 times to Australia. We lost twice to you blokes. We followed that up a year later with a shock loss in the semi-final to France. The country went into apoplexy, and defeats, they really rankled, and people reacted to them in a different way than they do today. What I'm trying to say is what I'm seeing at the moment, I believe, is not a one-off. It is a malaise which started at the 2019 Rugby World Cup in Tokyo in the semi-final. And actually, I could even backdate that to the 2017 Lions tour when we were introduced to this thing called box kicks for the first time. And I don't think we've ever successfully come up with a plan to counter those. And so what we're seeing at the moment, that was a humiliating defeat, an embarrassing defeat, and even more so when you're wearing a black jersey and you're overseas, because the All Blacks are such a source of pride for us, especially when we're travelling as New Zealanders. Rossi said after the capitulation at Ellis Park, where for 22 minutes, I think it was, you're up 22-0, you look like the best team in the world. If you added that 22 minutes to what we saw at the end of the game in Wellington and put that together, I don't know if I've seen a rugby team play as well as that since the All Blacks beat the Wallabies in 1996, 43-6 at the now defunct, dead Athletic Park. This is not something that has just happened overnight. This has been something that has been happening for a few years. And with the new coaching regime, this is something that their job is to get us out of this. They've been there for a year and a half at the moment, and they haven't. So when you say it's a sinking ship, I agree with you. I don't think that we're the Titanic and we're going to the bottom. Of course, we're the All Blacks. But at the moment, it is a downward. If you looked at a bell curve, we aren't on the right side of that curve at the moment. So I think it's a valid comment.
Yeah, it's interesting because we love this rivalry, and I was thinking about why. And I think we love our rival. We love you guys in a very weird and twisted way. It's definitional. Every young boy grows up thinking, I want to be a Bok and I want to play the All Blacks. When you think about being a Bok, you're just thinking, I want to play the All Blacks. You're not thinking of anything else, maybe England. We are defined by it, but we've been the underdog in this narrative for a while. If you look at, that's the period of time you're talking about, from 90s to the 10s to the end to the 19, you guys had won 45 to our 16. It reset the rivalry. Old days it was different. It was more green and gold. Now this decade, from 2020 on, you're spot on. It's 7-4, which just feels like a reset. That 7-4 feels massive to us, and it feels massive to you. But I don't want to undersell it because, like you say, we have our 0-57, those 257 games that still sit in the pit of my stomach. I know exactly where I was. I had to bail out a client who was in Ethiopia and then take him to a hospital in Tel Aviv, of all places. I watched the bloody game in a hospital with Israeli physios and nurses, and I was punching walls. And then I just didn't want to talk about rugby for the next 2 weeks. We should not skip the fact that it was the worst loss ever. But you look at 57-0 and then see where we are now. So do you see in the future this bounce back because you can no longer deny the problem and it's a scrum and it's a high ball and it's that? Or do you wonder about sort of population gain? And is New Zealand just going to be big enough to keep up with South Africa that actually is adding 5 million people every decade and more communities playing rugby? So how do you see this? How big a deal is it?
I think if we're smart, of course, we can bounce back from this. And I hope that it is one of those defeats, like you say, 57-0. When you say that, and when I think about that defeat, it's abhorrent. I can't imagine the All Blacks losing like that. And then I just watched this in Wellington where we were handed our bums on a plate, where we couldn't score in the second half, where in the end, we're just inept. It looked as though we'd given up the game. We conceded 43 points. Now, it's important to also put everything in perspective. And so this isn't a one-off result. We have, in the last few years, conceded and created records that we don't want to have. And I'm talking about, and no disrespect to any opponent here, because, Test rugby is at a level now where there's 5 or 6 teams who on their day look as though they can beat each other. But we lost to Argentina for the first time. We lost to Argentina at home. We lost to Argentina away. We lost a 3-test series at home for the first time since 1986. We lost to Australia, then we lost to Ireland, in that series. We lost to Ireland in 2016. They beat us twice. We had a record defeat to the Boks at Twickenham before the World Cup. We've now handed another record defeat. You put all of these into a big salad bowl, and that's a pretty ugly tasting salad for an All Black fan. So if it was isolated, if it was a one-off, I would cop that on the chin and I'd say, puff my chest out and say, no, come on, man, we're coming back. But all I'm constantly hearing is the same messages from the coaching panel and the players. And I know they get fed these messages and they get fed them so that they tell the media, and this is meant to placate us fans. And do remember, MV, I'm a broadcaster like yourself, sir, but I'm a fan. That's all I am. I'm a fan with a microphone, and I'm very fortunate that I've been in this position where I've been allowed to broadcast my feelings and my thoughts as a fan. And when you sit there and, you have this, and it compounds one upon the other. And for the last 2 years, for example, under a brand new coach, we lost 4 times last year, we lost 2 times this year. What you want to see is you want to see patterns, and you want to see an improvement. And that might mean that every 3 or 4 games or 5 games you suffer a little setback. As I go back to Russie, he used the word, and forgive me, he used the word dog shit after that 36 points conceded at Ellis Park, right? Our coaches never came out and were that forthright. As a fan, I want to hear that. I want them to say those words. I want them to acknowledge what I'm feeling at the same time, which is, that was ratchet, man. That was rubbish. Now, a couple of things about this. I've seen a lot of photos post-match where the All Blacks are standing around the ground. They look as though they've got fried bum face. They look as though they've just been fed cat food. And I like those pictures because that's how I'm feeling. And I want them to feel like that. And I want them to see those empty yellow seats at that Cape Town. And I want them to feel in their hearts that this is ugly and we don't want to feel like this again. And this is what you would have felt at 057 in 2017. It has to be a marker for us now. And in 2 years' time, maybe in 2027, maybe it happens in 2031 in the United States of America. But I want, as an old man, to look back at that and go, that was a point where we reset and we re-began. And I don't want to listen to the marketing, and I don't want to talk about the promotion, and I don't want to hear all of this kind of stuff. After we lost the series to Ireland, within days, there was a promotional thing from the All Black website. These guys were given like Rolex watches. They were Tissot watches from Switzerland or something. The promotional cup they gave, and we're sitting there going, we just lost the series. You're getting handed these things. I want them to feel that, and I want to look at their faces and to see them and think that, no, they don't ever want to go back to that place. So I'm hoping that that's what this is. And please don't think that I'm bitter or whiny or moany or that. I congratulate the Springboks. You were magnificent. And that's you dealt to us in a way that I haven't seen the All Blacks capitulate like that. But it has to be for us a moment in time that we say never again and we rebuild from there. If that's the case, we'll look at it like you look at 0-57. You'll always hate that, Harry. You'll always feel ugly about that. But look at where you are now. I want to be where you are now, if you know what I mean, in time, and feel that this did to us what that did to you.
I wanted to ask you, and I was about to ask you, is Razor the problem or whatever? But you went back further to Ireland, losing again at Soldiers Field and everything else. So before you can turn the corner, you need to know what's wrong. What's causing it? Is it a deeper malaise? Is it the fact you're not picking overseas players? What's going on in New Zealand rugby that's causing this to happen? So before you identify that, you can't fix it. What do you think is happening there?
I think there's a couple of things. I think that the luxury of 2009 through to about 2016 is we had a group of players. Now, if I can draw a parallel with the New Zealand cricket team, we've had a really good period of success over 5 or 6 years. We had it during the 1980s. We've had it recently, where all of a sudden we had some of our greatest ever players all playing together. You go back to that period in time and you look at that 2015 team. And MV, I'm not the first to say this, and I'm not a genius by saying this, but we had centurions in the front row. We had Retallick and Whitelock, who are centurions. We had a loose forward trio of Kieran Reid, the beast, Jerome Kano, for 2 World Cups, was the most outstanding player at those World Cups, Richie McCaw, again, all centurions. We had a halfback in Aaron Smith. We had Daniel Carter. We had a midfield of 2 centurions. And so we had this perfect moment in time where we had all these players. The players we have at the moment aren't All Black legends. There are very few of them that you will put in that conversation right now. So that's the first thing, right? And that can be cyclical, and we have to accept that. But I think when you add to that at the moment, what we do to prepare for test matches is we play Super Rugby, and I'm not sure that the level of competition in that competition is sufficient to get our players into the right physical, emotional, mental preparation to play the kind of encounter that we had on the weekend. And I think that is evident in some of the actions and decisions that are made on the field by some of the players. I've mentioned this in a podcast previously this week, and I'm not isolating or picking on this guy. There was a moment where Damien McKenzie, I think we had a 3-on-2, and he did this ridiculous, childish little chip kick, which was caught by one of your guys, which was a Super Rugby play. not appropriate for test level. And I'm mentioning this purely because I think that our Super Rugby, even though this year the competition was exciting and fantastic, it's not at a level which is preparing our guys for what they encountered in Wellington and what they're going to encounter at a World Cup, where, and you guys, we were there in Paris, Harry. I don't know if you were there, MV, but these matches are won on a dime. They're won on split decisions. They're won on small things. They're won on just minutes, moments. And in Super Rugby, you get a lot of time. Damien McKenzie gets every time. He can play like a circus animal. He does all of this kind of stuff. But in a test match, under load, under pressure, we've seen him continually make decisions which are the wrong decisions at the wrong time. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, but I just wonder whether or not the level of rugby we're playing to prepare for a test match is not good enough to get our players to that level at the moment. I think that has to be considered in any explanation.
Yeah, so Marty, you and I were together in these press rooms, and both of us were kind of pinching ourselves thinking, what are we doing here? We're guerrilla journalists. We're not even really journalists. We're just, imposter journos. And we were in the presence of a guy like Artie Savea, and I actually literally got a thrill, wow, I'm standing right here next to Artie Savea. And that was amazing. And you were amazed. But then I was thinking going away from that, but there weren't that many other players from the All Blacks that I would have had that thrill. I'm making your point now. Beauden Barrett, Artie Savea. I mean, the list starts drying up pretty quick. Will Jordan. It dries up very quickly. And I was thinking, you're right, 2015, we know all those All Blacks by their first name. You say their first name, I know who you're talking about. Ma'a, Dan, Richie, just say them. I was more excited to meet retired Richie McCaw in the lobby of my hotel, than Quinn Tupaia. No disrespect. The point is, you can have the greatest restaurant in the world with the greatest sous chefs, but if your ingredients are not good, they're trash. I'm sorry, but it's not going to work. You've got to have the proper beef and the proper fish. So was he a good coach because he had the best players at Super Rugby because he had a bunch of All Blacks, let's be honest, and he was playing other teams that didn't have as many Boks or Wallabies or All Blacks. And now he's going into the stage where maybe New Zealand's not got the best players anymore, and he has to coach like Joe Schmidt, and get them to the top level.
I think that's very perceptive. I'd love your opinion on this too, MV, because I think that's a very perceptive comment. And I don't know yet whether Scott Robertson has logged into that himself. Now, when I say that, how would I know? Because I'm just looking in from the outside. He is obviously a brilliant man motivator. He has had Crusaders sides who are stacked with great players. He's had Crusaders sides who, if you remember over the years, haven't been that good. They've had average seasons and they produce the goods at the right time. So obviously he has whatever it takes to get a group of players to play as a team and get them to win competitions. It is another level again and again and again to go up to test rugby. And we've been very privileged to be at training sessions. We have observed close at hand. There is a lot of people involved, MV, with the All Blacks. I don't know how many Russie's got, but there are a lot of people.
Plenty.
We have coaches upon coaches. We have coaches to coach the coaches' coaches. And I wonder whether or not it comes back in the end. And I believe in Scott Robertson as a person. And I would never for a second suggest let's sack an All Black coach. It's never happened. And we're not English football. We don't throw the coaches out after a couple of results. But I'm wondering whether it's time that he needs to clean that up a little and go back to himself being the guy who does a lot more than maybe he's doing at the moment. I'm looking from the outside and wondering whether he's got a whole lot of people doing all these things and he manages the lot. And I'm wondering whether he needs to remove a lot of those people and get in there and do this himself. It's just a suggestion, but it's something that I think a lot of us have been thinking over a couple of days, because when you've got a line-out coach, a scrum coach, we've got a skills coach, for God's sake. By the time you get to international rugby level, if you forgot your skills, what the hell do you need a skills coach for? It's easy to make these kind of flippant remarks, I know. But I hope you understand where I'm trying to drive down, what street I'm driving down here.
I've been watching a lot of New Zealand reaction since, and I divided them into three groups. For you, one, sort of the James Parsons, Tony Johnson theory, which is the Boks were very, very good. 13 entries in both matches at Eden Park and Wellington. It's just a matter of one time in the rain it didn't stick, and the second time around it did. And unfortunately, the All Blacks only got into the 22 5 times each, and that's not enough. So under that theory, the disparity is real. Another theory, I think, is the Marshy, Sonny Bill Williams, was now we're woken up. Now you're going to see Aussies. Wallabies are going to get walloped twice in a row. We're going to sail through November. It's sort of like, good, we're good. And then the third one, which is, I think what you're talking about, is Mills and maybe Kieran Reid saying, I saw a bit of give up. Not talking about the skills now, not talking about X's and O's and entries. I'm just saying I've never seen an All Black team capitulate. And I think that's where you are. That to me does seem like captaincy, leadership, coaching, the mental side. I don't think any of those guys became a bad player. I mean, all of them are really good. The scrum didn't go from rock solid granite in 2023. You and I were there. It was incredible. And now it's getting, I'm not sure I've seen the scrum get that monstered.
Yeah, and if you remember, let's go back
to the same guys. Yeah.
2022, when Ian Foster was in a very similar predicament. And 2 coaches were removed from him, and in came Jason Ryan. And at the time, I felt for John Plumtree, and I wondered whether those guys had been made scapegoats. Sometimes that happens in international sport, and it's not fair. But then life isn't fair. So, I wonder. And again, I'm just looking in from the outside. But is there too many of the same voice in any situation where you are high performance? Sometimes you need the sandpaper to rub the other way, just for the fact that it does. Just for the fact that we've all been in these marketing meetings where Guy Smiley sits there and you're sitting there going, the Emperor's got no clothes on, dude. You know what? And I don't want to be that guy that goes, oh, you missed a negative in the room because you're constantly, but I can't help myself going, I don't believe what you're selling me here, pal. And I do wonder whether there is enough of that in that room where somebody says, listen, that isn't quite right. Or are they all so much on the same page that it's all, yes, boss, yes, boss, yes, boss. Again, we're just floating theories here, MV, and I don't know. But when you suffer a butt kicking like that, when you get your bum handed to you on a plate like that, when you are embarrassed like that, this is what you have to remember and never forget this. And this is what frustrated me about the All Blacks media I saw today. Oh, the boys are hurting. The boys are hurting? You just suffered a record defeat. That's 100+ years of All Black rugby. The boys are hurting. We're taking the learnings. You haven't taken no learnings. We just got our asses kicked by Argentina 2 weeks ago. How many learnings have you taken? We lost 4 tests last year. Where are these learnings? We played France C and we struggled against them. Where are these learnings? Stop telling me about learnings and show me instead of so a little bit emotional. But you understand where I'm coming from on this, because I do believe that there is a point there.
Well, what happened after Australia, and Mary and I picked this up from Hendrik Cronje, who's a journalist in South Africa. The problem, what do we call him, Mary? The Pope almost. If he tells it, it's true. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And he said,
the high priest.
The high priest of rugby, if Hendrik Cronje says it, it happened. So after that Ellis Park hiding, Rassie, the real Pope in South African rugby, the man with the power, sat those guys down, Tony Brown, Jerry Flannery, and sort of laid down the law and said, listen, I support you, but it's not working. And I wonder if that culture then exists in New Zealand. But in his defense, from an outsider's point of view, Razor's defense, he's sort of coaching with his one hand tied behind his back. Rassie can pick players from across the world that's been coached and conditioned and ever with somebody else's money. Razor has to pick what's available to him. Is that not maybe the more fundamental problem? Number one, that he's maybe not really in charge of it. And number two, that he can't pick who he wants to pick.
Okay. So to answer that first, I want to list the players that are playing outside of New Zealand who genuinely would walk their way back into that team. Obviously, the number one name that we're all thinking about right now is Richie Mo'unga. Straight away, we're thinking about that name. Now, here's the thing. So last year, Razor was adamant, pushing the barrow, that we had to pick from overseas. He wanted that guy. Now, that was against New Zealand rugby policy. Then in January, he does a 180 degree that Tony Hawk would have been proud of on his skateboard, and he completely flips it. And all of a sudden, oh no, he's towing the party line, and he doesn't believe in that anymore. So straight away, as a man, I'm questioning what's happened there. Has he been got to? Why is he reversing that? There aren't that many players, I believe, right now who you would think, yes, get them back into the All Blacks. But let me say this as a fan. If there's one, put him back in. If there's one, put him back in, because we need him right now. So to me, it's about one thing. The only currency that the All Blacks have is winning. They aren't a marketing exercise. They aren't an Instagram account. They aren't a meme. They're a team that wins. The only thing about the All Blacks that counts is them winning test matches for New Zealand. That is why they're the All Blacks. That is why after 100 years they are so well respected. That is what we demand from them. No other sports team in New Zealand gets treated like this, because they don't deserve to be treated like that, because they don't have the record that a whole lot of guys who never got paid, MV, who went back to the farm afterwards and lugged fence posts around and so forth, carried tractors on their shoulders, Harry, because of those guys. So to me, if there's one name that Razor wants, listen, he gets given every resource available to him. We're a nation of 5.5 million people. Stop being stupid about this. We're allowed to play our trades in every field of endeavour that we wish around the world. Accountants, lawyers, bar staff. I've got a son overseas at the moment at university. Whatever. I don't believe in this thing now that says, hey, you have to play in New Zealand. We've got this ridiculous rule, MV, that you can play Super Rugby for a New Zealand team. You can't play Super Rugby in the same goddamn competition, play for an Australian team and get selected for the All Blacks. Okay? So there's something amiss there. But a long-winded way, again, I'm sorry, I apologise for answering this question, is if there's a player that he wants, then put that guy in. Richie Mo'unga, for one, is back in the country at the moment. Why isn't he training with the All Blacks at least? Why isn't he actually there with the team? I don't understand that. I don't get this. And I think a lot of us fans are frustrated by this, whether you believe whatever side of the argument.
I mean, people like players like Aaron Smith, TJ Perenara, Shannon Frizzell, Brody Retallick, maybe they're not at the peak of their powers, but they're better than the guys that are playing right now, I think. So there's that. The other thing is when I look at the All Black squad, it's made up almost equally from each Super Rugby team. And I always remember All Blacks having a dominant something, a spine, a cohesive unit from this team and then that team and maybe the third team. It's almost like just a mishmash. And so I've been wondering as I watch the All Blacks lately, even though they're still plenty tough, incredibly difficult to beat, impossible to beat at Eden Park, kind of, is I don't know if I know that they're dangerous enough, that they're incisive enough. I was thinking, who's dangerous out here? Will Jordan's dangerous, that's for sure, but not that many other guys. And that's weird, because when you look at the Box now, we weren't known as being such a danger team, more of a grind you down, slow poison. But there's danger all over the park now for you guys, and it was coming at you. So, yeah, what's your feeling about that? Is it too meek and mild, too polite?
No, I look, and we have another team in New Zealand, the Warriors, who play rugby league, and I go back to the same fundamental argument with this. Let me just introduce one name. Rieko Ioane started playing for the All Blacks in 2017. He played on the wing. I think that year he was voted one of the best wingers in the world, if not one of the up-and-coming players in the world that year. 2017, 18, 19, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 8 years. How much has your skill set improved in that 8 years? Are you that much of a better player? David Beckham for Manchester United, one of the best free kick experts, and everyone who loves his sport knows who this guy is. 20,000 times he said that he kicked that right foot free kick. He practiced 20,000 times. In the end, his muscle memory is so goddamn good that when he goes up to step it, he knows it. Rieko Ioane, I look at Rieko. I'm not picking on Rieko here, but I'm just using him as an example. Can he chip and chase? Can he produce a 50-20? And if not, why the hell not? Why aren't you practicing those skills? Why haven't you upskilled yourself to that extent? Why is it that not every single member of that back line cannot hit a 50-20 under duress? Why is it that every member of that back line cannot drop a goal from the 22 under duress? If we're in the last second of a World Cup final, Harry, it's 12-10 to you blokes. We win in the ruck. But our first 5, our number 10 is caught in that ruck, right? Ball comes out to the halfback. The second 5, it's not my job. I can't kick a drop goal to win the game. What a load of bollocks. Come on, man. This is surely something that you must practice. I'm not talking turning up to training and doing what you're paid to do. I'm talking about going down the park. Now, in 2011, I was very fortunate. I presented the Rugby World Cup on one of the channels in New Zealand. I was driving past a park in Remuera one day with one of my young sons. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw this guy kicking goals. I thought, who's that? I stopped. Dan Carter was out there with 2 mates behind the goal, and he was practicing goal kicking. This wasn't All Black training. He was practicing. And I wonder whether any of our guys do this. And so if you aren't a world-class player and you don't have that talent, guess how you get good? David Beckham was never the best England footballer. But by God, he got so good at it by sheer practice. And I do wonder whether or not we've lost that simple, fundamental human thing where you want to get better. And I look at Rico and I think, we put you back on the wing. Where's your sidestep? Where is your chip and chase? Where is that footwork that I look at when I look at the NFL and I look at those wide receivers, Harry, who can stop on a dime, turn, move, and just the shake of their hips can get rid of a defender? Where's all that? Why have you not upskilled and learned that in 8 years? 8 years of being an All Black. Is that an answer to your question?
Yes. Yeah, I was looking at the 20 caps and less guys. Tamaiti, Quinn, Ratima, Satiti, Finau, Proctor, Hotham, McAllister, Holland. The only guy that I think upskilled, like you said, was Roygaard, and to a certain extent, Karifi. Yeah, and Roygaard is amazing, but it's not enough people. And I looked at the under-20s as well, and there was bright signs for the baby box, but it didn't feel like the New Zealand team was as exciting as it used to be. And I started wondering, is there a certain conservatism that's taken over in New Zealand rugby? I mean, is that what we're talking about here? Almost there's the golden age, and then now people have caught you guys. You know, it took a while, but now they're caught up. Skills, speed, all that. And it's almost like Razor is the most conservative coach out there. You know, in his selections, in the game plan. It doesn't seem innovative. I'm looking at innovation. I'm looking at South Africa and Ireland, pretty much. I mean, that's what my worry is for New Zealand, because I want New Zealand to always be the best, right there with us, ding-dong battle forever. But I think there's a sameness to the ideas, and perhaps it's the Super Rugby thing you're talking about, playing, like Clayton McMillan said, playing too much of the same thing every week.
Yeah, and I'm interested very much in your view on this, MB, because I'm looking at it thinking, how are we going to get better from here? Because that's what concerns me the most from here. As I said earlier, it's about, is this a stake in the sand moment? Can we look back at this moment and go, okay, we are getting better? And please don't think that I'm whining about this, and don't think that I'm not acknowledging the excellence of South Africa and everything else, but I don't care about that bollocks. I'm an All Black fan. All I care about is my team for a start, right? And I wonder that too, Harry, and I wonder whether or not, Razor, what is your game plan? What are your tactics? Why are we constantly kicking the ball away? Why are our players doing that? These aimless kicks downfield that must be imprinted by the coach saying this is a strategy. What is the strategy? You keep saying to us that it's to play this fast-paced rugby and run guys off their feet. So we do 3 or 4 phases. We're not committing 6 of your forwards to those phases, and then we kick the ball away. At least if we're doing that, surely what we should be doing is dragging 1, 2, 3 on the back and making you come to us and commit those loose forwards, because if you don't, we've got 3 guys driving 7 meters into your territory. So I don't know what our tactics are. What are our tactics? Just I called it frilly willy-nilly bollocks on the weekend. And, you know, I don't get it. I don't understand what it actually is we're trying to do. And so I put it back to the coach and I say, this is up to you to figure this out. And you are a really good coach and you've got a really good rugby brain, and you have had this perception from us all that you are innovative, that you do things outside the square and do think outside the square. You don't have to do too much outside the square. Rassie Erasmus, look, I think I love about this guy is he does things which outrage the rugby world. And we had a couple of great weeks talking about lineouts in the middle of the bloody field and kicking off from halfway and getting the ball. And whether or not he's taking the piss out of us, but what he's actually doing is he's constantly throwing things out there. And now like this. Now, one of them might stick against the wall. Who knows whether it does or not? But I'm not seeing that at the moment. Yet with All Black coaches in the past, look, I'm an old man. I go back, I'll tell you about a test match in 1977. We went to France and we'd just come off the tour to South Africa in 1976. We played a couple of tests away in France. The first one, we got absolutely beaten up. Brian Williams got injured in that game. I don't think he played a test for us again. The second game that we played, Gary Sear did a quick line-out. We had Stu Wilson with this beautiful cutback. He was on the right wing. He cut back from the left wing centre position. It was innovative. It was fresh. It was new. It was fast. We've always prided ourselves on this, talked about being that team, yet at the moment, are we that team? And I think if you ask yourself honestly, I don't think we are. We might be saying we are, but I'm not actually seeing it. So what I'd like to know, one, is what are the tactics? What are we actually trying to do? Are we trying to outmuscle you? Or are we trying to outrun you? We're not trying to outkick you because we can't do that at the moment. So that's the first thing to do. And then the second thing is to use the players that we have and think, okay, if we're not going to be able to beat you like this, how do we beat you with the players that we've got? These are all things that come absolutely down to that coaching crew and how they interpret the players' skills and how they use those skills. So what we're talking about here, ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching this, is just simply trying to look at the whole big, broad picture and think, okay, what is it exactly that, how did we win these games against? You can't play the South Africans like we might play France. You can't play France like we might play England. You can't play Ireland and Chicago like we might play Samoa, for example. And so this is where the coach's brain earns his money, doesn't he, MV? Isn't this the whole point of this?
Well, that's what I'm trying to think. What I'm thinking of now. In the old days, when South Africa was still isolated, we felt we were still the world champions. The Currie Cup was the greatest competition in the world, and we got a rude awakening when we actually started playing the proper guys like you. And I'm thinking about where that innovation comes from that you talk about. URC number one. I will never be forgiven, and I'm going to get thousands of comments if I don't ask you, is the URC better than Super Rugby number one? I say tongue-in-cheek. Secondly, Japan. Lots of players playing in Japan, don't play that long. They're superbly conditioned. Innovation there as well. A lot of South African coaches, a lot of All Black coaches. Steve Hansen, everybody else is there. What I'm getting at is maybe the Super Rugby is so isolated that, it starts breeding a copy of a copy of a copy. It never really gets improved. I mean, look at when we play against Leinster. We play against Leo Cullen. We play against Jacques Nienaber. World Cup winning coach for that matter, in like I just said, in Japan, Frans Ludeker, Steve Hansen, all those guys. Isn't that maybe part of the problem that you guys are not being exposed to more types of rugby, and that's why innovation gets stifled?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think that if you ask all of the Super Rugby, the problem that we have in New Zealand is everyone is under the pay of the Politburo. So not a lot of these guys can talk honestly about any of these things. And if you sat down with them privately, you get, Harry, you know this, you get a lot of things said to you privately, which you then, if I broadcast this, it's some guy called Martin Devlin broadcasting this, and everyone say, well, what would you know? Oh, I can't tell you who told me, but I did get told. If you could sit down honestly with all these guys, I'm sure that they would say that, MV, that they would say exactly that. How do I say this with love in my heart? Like I'm handing you a red rose, Harry. We miss you guys in Super Rugby.
There we go. I wanted to hear that from your mouth.
You just made envious day.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
My impression of NZRU from the outside is it's always very choreographed, and that succession plans are very smooth. And we were envious of that, actually, at how smooth it seemed, because we fire our guys. I mean, we'll give you the sack even if you win the World Cup. And we just kind of have spasms almost. My impression was that to be an All Black coach, you had to serve your tenure, you had to pay your dues, you had to be the guy that was carrying the bags, and then you became the guy, but you also had to go overseas and coach somewhere, Wales or Ireland or whatever. You do that thing as well. You do your gap year or something, and then you come back. Razor skipped all that. There's no real, sitting in the box. There's no junior status. There's no crown prince, and there's no go abroad and go play at Munster or something. Is that part of the issue here? Is that Razor never lost anything? I mean, he didn't learn how to lose and learn from losing. He only learned from winning.
Look, I will live and die by this. I like this guy. I like him as a person. I like him as a coach. I believe in him. I'm not throwing the baby out. I want him to solve this for us as fans. And I'm only speaking people from a fan's point of view. I believed in Ian Foster. When these guys get the position, I'm a real loyalist like this. I know it's probably something that I should think about in other ways, but it's just in my heart. I want these guys to win, and I want them to be that guy. And so, to me, it's up to him to solve this. He gets paid all this money. He's appointed all these people. He has all these resources. We can talk about it till the cows come home about whether or not he has the experience or not. He wanted that job. He turned down other jobs to get this job. He's been handed this job. His responsibility is to get this right. And here we go into 2 tests against Australia. This is the first steps in that. Look, I said on a podcast earlier in the week, we've got 6 big tests to come this year. 2 against Australia, Ireland, and then England, Scotland, Wales. We have to win all 6 of those games. To restore that pride that we lost in Wellington, we have to win all 6 of those. We win all 6 of those, and I'm not sure that we're going to. And at the moment, if you ask me, I'd say, my God, maybe we win 4 of them. If we win all 6 of those, then we start again on that bell curve like I talked about, and we start going up that slope. But we need to see this now. You've had 14 tests last year, 6 this year. Stop telling me about sticking learnings up my backside and start frigging well doing it. That's what I want to actually see.
I think we were working on my final question was actually going to be this. At Eden Park, you literally found a press room that no one was in. And you and Lachlan, your right-hand man, were literally doing a simulcast of the game by yourself in a press room. I never found you there. I was with all the very serious, sober New Zealand Kiwi journalists. Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the fun of that, and just, along with all the next week was sad, but that week itself must have just been such a rush for you.
Such a relief for a start. That record means so much to so many of us who go back. I've been watching the All Blacks for 50 years, since the water polo test against Scotland in 1975. I was introduced to the All Blacks by my late father. It means so much to so many of us. It's not just a rugby team. It's not just a New Zealand team. It's in our blood. Where this is. I understand where you guys come from as well. I live and breathe this stuff. It's just something that is bigger than sport to me. I got told a couple of comments afterwards saying, "Oh, look, you're too emotional about this." Emotion. Sport is life. It's love. It's a metaphor for life, is it not? We live ours and breathe all the incidents that happen in our life, and they get encapsulated in moments of games and things like that. So don't ever talk to me that it's not emotional. Of course, it's emotional. Harry, I adore doing this. I find that to get paid to do this, to talk about sport, to love sport, to involve my life in sport, is just something that is a joy. I look at the faces of you two guys. I know that it's the same thing. We are the lucky ones. We were very lucky that night, because I have been in those boxes, and it's such a somber environment where people sit there and they're so serious. I can't watch a game seriously like that. I'm up and down and jumping around, and I know that I get told to shut up in these situations and sit down and be neutral and all this kind of stuff. I'm sorry, I can't be any of that. I've never been any of that in my life, and I can't certainly be that about the All Blacks. I love this team. I'll always love this team. But I love this team enough it's like a child to me, one of my sons to me, that when you're off the rails, your dad says to you, "Hey, listen, I love you to death, but you're acting like a dickhead. Pull your head in. I love this team to death, but you're not good enough at the moment, and you need to be humble, and you need to get back to being better than you are. And stop telling us about learnings, and stop telling us about this stuff, and actually do it instead of saying it."
Martin, I was joking with Harry before we started this podcast about, in Pretoria, we know how to play rugby properly, and you joked and said we eat government's den. The point I want to make this point. I remember the All Blacks in 1976, and I specifically, for some reason, I was a small boy. I remember Sid going, and that name is stuck in my head for 50 years now. I want to go back to that, and I want this rivalry to be as strong as it always has been. And I honestly hope that you can take your learnings, and get out of this bell curve, and this can be your Albany moment, where you, like you said, that line has now been drawn in the sand. I mean, we need you used to say this about Australia, now we're saying it about the All Blacks. We need a strong Springbok All Black rivalry.
We do. And the difference is, is that after what Australia did to you at Ellis Park, they embarrassed you blokes at Ellis Park.
Yeah.
Harry, the grin on my face afterwards, you remember that? I was and I loved every second of it. But I also acknowledge what has happened since then. And what Rassie did was he, as I said right at the beginning, he said dog shit. He criticised that team publicly, which coaches don't do. But I think what he did, and he wasn't trying to humiliate his players, but he was telling them that you have a responsibility to your public, and don't ever forget that. You get the wristwatches, you get the cars, you get the pretty girls, you get the salaries. Forget all of that Instagram bollocks. Your responsibility is to your fans and your country, and that's what matters most. And I want to see a response. Now, your response in Cape Town wasn't a great response compared to what we've seen subsequent to that. Then it comes to Eden Park, you lose again. But my God, what a turnaround in that second half. You were down 10-7, remember, in Wellington. What a turnaround that is. And it must be a source of immense pride to that coach, because whatever it is that he instills in those players, and I'm only putting words into his mouth or thoughts into his head, obviously, but I believe that surely is what coaching is about. And if you ask him in a couple of years' time or something, I'm sure he would acknowledge that as well, that this must be a source of immense pride, because his messages did get through. Because those players, you can train all you want. You can have all the skills that you want. This is a game of men hitting men in physical combat. And if you don't have what is in your heart and the desire to do that, and the want to do that, and the will to do that, and the desire to pick yourself up, we've all had life lessons all the time. And I believe this is what I mean about sport teaching these things. To get back up off that floor, to go to that next ruck, to smash that guy in the next ruck, and to keep going. I didn't see that at the end of that game. I didn't see that from the All Blacks at the end of that game. And they deserve to look around those stands and see empty yellow seats, because that's us saying it ain't good enough. We love you to bits, but we need you to be better.
And I'm fired up, MV. I want to go play somebody.
I want to run through somebody now. Yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Good luck in the Bledisloe. I'm actually looking forward to the Bledisloe more than I have in age, just because of what you just said. I want to see the backlash. I want to see it coming. Yeah.
Same. I appreciate you two guys. I love your podcast. I got a lot of respect for you both, MV. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah,
Harry, my brother, as always. We're going to be together forever now, man.
Yes, man. Hey, have fun in Venice. Don't drown.
Don't sink with the city. Go. Thanks, man. Appreciate
Later,
it.
Cheers.
my brother.
Cheers.
Later.
This is the Lekker Rugby Pod, only on Megaphone Rugby.